Rango is one of the true standout animated movies. A perfect example of why animation is absolutely necessary for cinema. The reason that we should choose animation over live action from time to time is that there are just things live action can't accomplish. The absolute best animated movies, try and imagine them in live action, and I guarantee they are inferior. Dragon Ball, Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Spider-Verse, while possible in live action, the variety of visual styles is one of the key strengths of those movies. So yeah, you can imagine a few of these movies in live action, though they wouldn't be best suited that way. So believe me, it is the absolute highest compliment I can give when I say that I can't imagine Rango any other way. The visuals perfectly suit the story, the setting, the characters. Top to bottom, from surface value to the most minute details, this film continues to impress me on rewatches. This desolate wasteland, the parched town of dirt. At all times, this movie is just a mix of brown and beige, and yet it's never mundane. Every set piece is handcrafted to perfection, just like the character designs. This is another advantage animated movies have, being able to make the most bizarre creatures human-like enough to make them relatable. And that's another reason why I do appreciate this movie, because it doesn't really try to make any of the characters cutesy or lovable. It pushes it about as far as it can go before it teeters into uncanny territory. Also, making Rango a chameleon that isn't native to this area is smoothly demonstrated by the fact that he's the only one that isn't that muddy brown or beige colour. Simple but effective way to make him stand out. Not to say the other characters don't stand out, there are plenty of standouts here, like the coffin maker spider, the hawk with an engraved metal beak, rattlesnake Jake. All of the characters are unique. Also, they all act realistic, and that lends more believability to the overarching story. You sort of forget that they're all just humanoid animals. This is a movie with gorgeous visuals, hilarious moments, and most important of all, a memorable cast of characters. Before I continue and talk about the rest of the movie, I highly recommend that you go and watch it for yourself before you finish my review. If you haven't seen it, that is. This isn't intended as a substitute for the movie or anything. This is just me showing my appreciation. Anywho, without further interruption, let's begin. The movie opens to Rango acting out an archetypal Shakespearean stage play with a number of his inanimate buddies. A wind-up goldfish, a triple amputee who just seems to have lost her head, and Dr. Marks. It's clear that Rango is bored of being alone as he contemplates his own identity. He comes to the conclusion that his character is undefined, and what this story needs is a dramatic turn of events to propel Rango into conflict.
And so our story begins.
He comes across the cause of the cars swerving, a flattened armadillo who talks about his quest to get to the other side. He asks the armadillo why he couldn't have just waited until there weren't any cars coming to cross the road, to which the armadillo responds,
"It's a metaphor."
Plenty of memorable shots here. He takes an absolute beating, but he's still got time for a one-liner.
I think the metaphor broke my spleen.
The armadillo gets up and directs Rango to a town out in the desert. On his travels, a camouflaged toad tells Rango to
Blend in.
As the hawk flies overhead, he desperately tries to blend in with his surroundings. Tries being the keyword here, as he is unsuccessful and is forced to run. This is another memorable action sequence. Eventually, he hides in this glass bottle, which the hawk picks up and boink! It hits the toad, giving his position away.
Move over! I let you kiss my sister!
Oh, I let you kiss my sister! They both try to make their escape, but the hawk snatches the toad. Soon after, he meets Beans. No, not the food item. A lady lizard with a broken defense mechanism where she just kind of freezes in place. She gives him a ride into town. He's a clear outsider here though, so he tries to blend in. This part where he copies these townsfolk's walking patterns always gets a chuckle out of me. It's just hilarious. Then he enters the saloon, which looks amazing by the way. Look at this volumetric lighting. The lighting is one of the more impressive things about Rango. It was a priority since the pre-production stage. They didn't want a photorealistic look. Gore Verbinski, the director, said that he wanted a photographic look. So he wanted the film to look as if it had been photographed or as if it could have been photographed. To which I would say he succeeded, and then some. We get a parallel of an earlier shot. We see his face enveloped in a rectangular frame, just like back in the car. Who is he?
Well, I think we're about to find out.
He gives this badass monologue to everyone in the saloon, ending it with his name.
Rango.
Are you the fella that killed them Jenkins brothers?
Uh-huh.
Killed him with one bullet.
All 7 of them.
That's right.
He explains how he did it, but the saloon's cheers are cut short when Bad Bill walks in. His threat is ingrained into my memory. He says,
If I ever see your face in this town again, I'm gonna cut it off and use it to wipe my unmentionables.
Unmentionables. Bill is a Gila monster, which is a venomous subspecies of lizard. If you didn't know that, now you do. Knowledge is power. Anyway, when Bill blows his cigar smoke in Rango's face, he takes it as a challenge, pinching the cigar and swallowing it. Yes! Bill slams a revolver on the bar and slides it over to Rango. It's time to... Never mind, no it's not. The Hawk is back. Yet another brilliant chase sequence later. The Hawk almost has Rango, but he fires off one lucky shot, splitting the cables for the water tower and squishing the Hawk.
He did it with one bullet too, just like he said.
But little did he know, the Hawk was the only thing keeping a certain somebody away. So this marksman with the heart of a lion is appointed sheriff by the mayor. The entire town takes their buckets and pails out to a giant tap in the desert, but unfortunately turning the valve doesn't release water. With the water supply being limited already, the townspeople begin to panic, and to make things worse, the water isn't just limited, it's now gone. The bank's been robbed! 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 Funnily enough, a prospecting permit is left behind at the scene of the crime. Rango gave this permit to a group of critters that tunneled out of the ground last night. Rango rounds up all the townsfolk and they ride. But not for very long because they don't know where they're going. Instead they return to town and go through the hole that the robbers dug. It's here we really get to appreciate the variety of character designs and personalities. Eventually the trail leads to Mr. Merrimack from the bank, and the doctor concludes that his cause of death was drowning. In fact, the ground underneath them is still damp. An outlaw by the name of Rattlesnake Jake is mentioned at the fire, and for some reason, keeping up this facade, Rango tells everyone that it's his brother. This will be important later on. A little later we actually get a pleasantly sensitive scene with Beans, where she and Rango have a heart-to-heart. It ends with Beans freezing up, as she often does. Rango gives her a kiss on the cheek, and as he walks away, she unfreezes and smirks, showing that she'd faked it. Cheeky. The next day, they find the bank robbers. They use a pantomime Trojan horse, using Rango's experience in the field to get close. It's a repeat of the start of the movie, but with more lively actors now. Rango tells the leader of the trio his entire family is under arrest.
My entire family?
They all rise from the ground like zombies with this haunting music in the background. This is like genuine nightmare fuel if you watch this as a kid. All hell breaks loose as Rango and Co steal the wagon. The two parties wage war on each other with Ride of the Valkyries playing in the background. They just knock it out of the park with every single action sequence in this movie. It's... man, yeah. And this is no exception. It's just brilliant. The chase comes to a stop when the water bottle falls off the wagon and it is revealed that it was empty. So once again, Rango and his squad return to town empty-handed. Rango suspects the mayor has something to do with this because of something that he previously told him. Control the water and you control everything. Offended by the accusations, he instructs Bill to call in Rattlesnake Jake. Now Bill advises him not to. In fact, he says,
Jake's the Grim Reaper. He never leaves you without taking a blooming soul.
now will the mayor heed his warning? No. The townspeople of Dirt have learned through discussion that the mayor has bought out all of the land. For what purpose, they are unsure. With everything up in the air, the townspeople panic again. Rango calms them all down, assuring them that as long as that sheriff sign hangs up there, they will still have order. Rattlesnake Jake slithers towards Rango, scaring him stiff.
Brother. Thirsty.
Earlier when Rango claimed that Jake was his brother, he also claimed that he was immune to his venom. Quite clever they circle back to it and don't really make a big deal of it. It's one of those aha moments if you're actually paying attention. Also in the Blu-ray extras, it reveals that Jake is actually the one that killed the Jenkins brothers. He hands Rango a revolver, ordering him to shoot. The fear in his expression tells Jake all he needs to know.
You got killer in your eyes, son. I don't see it.
He strips Rango of his pride and forces him to admit the truth. Forces him to admit he didn't do any of those things that he said he did. Then he exiles him. Rango, humiliated, wanders out into the desert once more. He walks and walks until he meets the spirit of the West. Whether he's real or just a figment of Rango's imagination is unclear. This is the other side. Though the Armadillo told Rango that the other side was a metaphor, so I assume the spirit of the West is something that's also intangible. The spirit motivates Rango to return and to make things right. Rango goes back to the family of bank robbers. They put their differences aside and team up. They find the emergency shut-off valve the mayor has been using and switch the flow of water back to normal. We cut to the mayor urging Beans to sign away her land, confirming that he is indeed the one behind all of this. His plan was to make everyone think that their land was worthless due to the water drought, and then he'd buy it all up and start anew. Beans refuses and the mayor orders Jake to scare her. When he goes too far, the mayor orders him to stop, but Jake reminds him who's really in charge. Rango marches back into the town of Dirt, calling Jake's name.
Thirsty, brother?
Water floods the town of Dirt and carnage ensues. Rango's air force poses the Hawk, frightening Jake enough to waste all of his ammunition trying to tear it down. By the time he's realised it's a decoy, it's too late. Rango points his gun at Jake, and this time the look in his eye is different, and it's actually Jake's gaze that softens. Unfortunately though, the mayor threatens Beans, so Rango concedes. It's clear by the way that Jake is looking at Rango, as he hands over his weapon, that he has earned some level of respect though. As the mayor tries to drown Rango and Beans, he points the gun at Jake. No more loose ends, but the mayor hadn't accounted for Rango saving a bullet in his mouth. When him and Beans share a kiss in their last moments, she accidentally swallows his contingency plan. One Heimlich maneuver later, the mayor pleads to Rango, "We must be able to reach a mutually beneficial solution to this current situation." But he has someone else to answer to. Jake and Rango tip their hats to one another, confirming that they are now on equal ground. The last we see of Jake, he wraps himself around the mayor and tears him out of town, leaving Rango and the townspeople to thrive. The DVD and Blu-ray release add an extra scene showing this and the quintessential riding off into the sunset scene. And that's that. There's absolutely loads of story I didn't include, so there's still plenty to see if you're going to go and watch it for yourself. Johnny Depp, who voices Rango, is an expert at sinking into a role and making the audience forget that it's just a character. This movie is no exception. I mean, it's not just Johnny, everyone is perfectly cast here, especially Jake. Also, honourable mention, the wounded bird, who isn't given a name, is meant to represent the Native American archetype, and he is played by a Native American actor. Always appreciated. Verbinski, the director of this movie, created a wonderful, healthy work environment. Everyone involved did an amazing job, and it definitely helped that Gore and Johnny knew each other beforehand, having worked on Pirates of the Caribbean together. Johnny and the rest of the cast did a lot of live acting here, just roughly storyboarding the movement, placement, and emotion of the characters. But the audio recorded here was used for the final movie. This creates a more natural flow to the dialogue than just standing in a booth reading your lines off a sheet of paper. They clearly did their research too. Every animal shown in this movie is native to the Mojave Desert, which is where this movie is set, or at the very least inspired by. With the exception of Priscilla, she's an aye-aye,
Well, you're funny looking too.
which are native to Madagascar. Kind of bizarre, but this must have been intentional. Everything else in this movie is. Looking through the behind the scenes and extras, everyone speaks with such conviction and pride about the movie. It's like the polar opposite of watching Chris Pratt talking about Mario.
Growing up, man, I spent hours of my life stomping Koopas.
They have such confidence in the art direction A lot of the earlier character concepts were more grotesque, but the final product ended up being a perfect balance in my opinion. Like I said, just about as far as they could push it before it started to become unrelatable or unappealing. It's a complete evolution of the Western genre. They combined the best qualities and stereotypes from all the old movies and evolved them. When they were storyboarding the shootout between Rango's gang and the bank robbers, Verbinski insisted on including the bank robbers riding on bats, as aerial combat hasn't been done in a Western before. In all ways, this is one of my absolute favourites, and that's about all I have to say on that, so thanks for watching. Stay tuned.
Bye bye.